hoping to highlight very relevant points for all of us to discuss in the question answer session. And I want to just put one rider in case something goes wrong with internet for me. I will join back at the soonest as I can. So please bear with me if that should happen. But let me plunge right into what we see are the causes of increasing depression among the youth of the country today. Um, I'm looking at it actually not three, four perspectives. We have the first one, and perhaps the most significant one, social media, and the impact of social media on the self-esteem of the youth today. I'm going to look at addictions, and these addictions go into the virtual world or the non-virtual world. And every time there's an addiction, the whole cycle of withdrawal, the low that comes from the withdrawal, the substitution that is needed. So we're going to look at the addictions. We're going to look at social skills. And this is just general survival skills of all of us in the society. What do we understand by the expressions of social norms? How are the youth today managing and what are they struggling with? And of course, a very critical area to look at would be parenting and what's happening to parents today and how they may be a very relevant factor in depression and the reason that depression is rising amongst the youth today. So let's look at the first factor. And I'm sure we've all experienced this, that the internet has done many, many things for us over the last 10 years. If we were in a lockdown in the last 11 months or so, we've been able to cope with the lockdown. We've been able to work from home. We've been able to shift things around so that there is productivity from wherever we may be. There are also very many downsides to something like the internet. What has happened is not only is good information, not only is technology available, it is very easily available, it is very cheaply available, it is available without any filter. So the information is coming to the youth of today with no guidance, with no explanation, and whatever is the topic that anybody wants to know about, there's a whole host of websites, authenticated and not authenticated, which will give out information. What does the internet and what does social media mean to the youth today? If you're on Instagram, it's about how many likes are you getting. If the profiles of 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 21-year-olds, and you look at their Snapchat history, or you look at what they have been posting on Snapchat, it would be very, very surprising to people from 15 or 20 years ago. Because the video will go away, because the image will go away, people feel a little bit more risky. People feel a little bit more liberated to share things about themselves that ordinarily we will not do in the real world. Yeah. So what is beginning to matter, because social media is such a visual presence, what is beginning to matter to people is how many likes am I getting? So my self-esteem is directly related to the number of likes. If I don't get as many likes as my neighbor, as my colleague, as my friend, this is a problem. If I'm not looking perfectly turned out, today somebody was talking to me that my daughter has stopped smiling. She doesn't smile at all. She used to smile as a younger kid. Now she's 15, 16 years old. She won't smile. Why? Because one tooth is crooked. And we are so conscious of the perfection that social media has put out there. Airbrushed images, celebrities shot by professionals, a certain norm that you must be turned out like this, that 15, 16-year-olds are not only, minding a crooked tooth, they're going for cosmetic surgery, they're going for lip enhancements, They are going for nose jobs. And it would be quite shocking to the audience over here how young they are that are going in for these kind of modifications to themselves. So the physical appearance has become a very big connector to the self-esteem. And sadly, that, we will all change, we will all grow older, we will all look different. So if self-esteem gets so deeply linked to how my physical appearance is, and my tooth is crooked, or my nose is not as perfect as I want it, or I want my face to look more chiseled, it's going to lead to a lot of issues of self-esteem, low self-esteem, and therefore more depression. And I am sure that there are regions in the country and there are places in the country where this is not as pertinent as it may be in others. But there are pockets, especially the urban and the suburban pockets, where social media has become so much of a benchmark that people, if they're not perfect looking, they don't like it. If it's not about the physical appearance, the other thing that has started becoming very relevant for the youth of today is how they are viewed. What is their reputation on social media? So if their friends don't like something that they have put out on social media, that calls for a sulk, that calls for a cry, that calls for some depression. It makes you feel socially isolated. And if you notice, none of these things are actually in the real world. They're all happening behind a computer. They're all happening in the privacy of a person's, whatever is the space that they have, if they have a room or if they have a desk or whatever it is. And there's no conversation about it. There's no perspective that they can take. Whatever is the information that is coming off the internet, the only perspective that they have is the meaning that they make out of it. What would happen if you were in college, if you were in school, if you were in an office as a young person, and you told your friend, I don't think my nose is looking so good, I'm thinking of changing my nose, or I don't like the way, my teeth are, they're so crooked. Somebody sitting next to us would reassure us, and they would tell us, no, don't worry, you look perfectly fine. Or, okay, yes, your tooth is crooked, but you're such a nice person, nobody even notices that. Or look at X and Y and Z. There are far more crooked teeth in the world out there. But because that social connection is diminished, because people are only making meaning sitting behind their desk, behind their computer, we are missing the perspective that young people could have by talking to other people, by discussing things with other people, and they themselves make poor choices on their own because the social context is missed out in a social media setup. If we looked maybe 3 decades ago or 4 decades ago, what made people feel good about themselves? What gave them good self esteem? What gave them healthy self esteem? And there were a few things that did. Academic achievement was a big one. People who did well academically were appreciated. It made people try very hard. It made people very industrious. It made people really want to do well. If somebody didn't do well or it wasn't academically talented, sure, there was a downside to that. But all in all, there was a lot of striving. There was a lot of effort that was being put in to achieve a goal. And obviously, everybody couldn't get it. So some people got the success, and some people learned that, oh, I'm not as bright as the next person. And this was the first experience of a small setback or a failure. So they didn't achieve academically. Maybe somebody got an early career opening. Yeah. So if somebody got into the track that they liked, whether it was engineering or architecture or the humanities or accounting or whatever it was that the career they chose, if they made their entry into the career, that gave people a lot of satisfaction. It gave them security. It gave them hope that I am on the right track, and they felt good about themselves. If they achieved financial success, if they maybe started a business, if they started seeing salaries coming in, if they started, feeling confident about the independence that money brought to them, people would feel good. And that was another source of healthy and good self-esteem. Sports, if people were able to excel, if people were able to get some medals in, whether it was chess or whether it was badminton, people felt good and it gave them healthy self-esteem. 3 decades ago, the nature of relating and relationships was also very different. There was, if you have a committed partner, if you had somebody who really cared for you, if there was somebody who was invested in you, you felt good. Oh, so and so. And it was hard for someone to come to a point where they would say, yes, I'll commit to you. My family is against it, or my family is for it. And there was some effort involved in getting to a committed relationship. So when you did get that committed relationship 3, 4 decades ago, it was like a prize you had won. It was like something that you climbed a mountain to get, and it felt very good. Now I'm going to contrast it with how life is today and what seems to be the basis of self-esteem. Yeah? The basis of self-esteem and the basis of our confidence and the basis of us being all right with ourselves is how much we have. And for the youth, very often it is how much have my parents bought me? Do I have the latest clothes? Do I have the latest gadgets? Do I have all the branded things or the most fashionable things that I need? And I am as good as the material possessions or the things that I own. I've already talked a lot about the physical appearance, and that's become such a source of self-esteem. Now, neither material possessions nor physical appearance is something that anybody can actually do much about unless you pressurize somebody to pay a lot of money or you go to the surgery and get something done. So this is something really outside the sphere of influence, which is beginning to impact on the self-esteem. Social media success. If I'm a success on social media, I have people watching, I have people liking, I'm good. My worth and my hope and my courage is not coming from my achievement or my hard work. It's coming from all things that I just need money for or I am born with. Once again, how others see me. And others has become a very wide spectrum of others. It is no longer significant others. Earlier, our social networks were narrower, and we had some people who were very close to us and who gave us energy and who gave us sustenance, and we were able to get a lot of easy conversation in. We felt connected, we felt loved, and we felt good in those connections. At this moment, the number of connections that the youth have runs into the hundreds and the thousands. And of course, it's impossible to have a good quality relationship with so many people. You can only have a good quality relationship with a friend that you spend time with one friend or 3 friends, maximum 5 friends. And we're really missing that close network of friendships in the youth today. The number is so important that the depth and the quality of that relationship is getting compromised. And the fifth point on here is literally about the number of relationships, that it's become very easy for partnerships to be formed and for partnerships to be dissolved. And I will relate to you a story which will probably make you all, really think about what might be happening. This is about a young girl in Delhi. She's about in her early 20s right now. And what happened with her was that she was in a relationship. She liked the person. Her parents allowed the guy to come home. So it was quite open like that. She invited him home one day when the parents were not there. And he threw such a tantrum asking for all the gold in the house. And she felt that, oh, this boy needs it. He needs it for something that his parents are stuck for money. She opened the locker of the family gold and took out her own earrings and gave it to him. And he kept on then demanding more and more and more until he'd emptied out the whole locker, and that's what he was after in the first place, that I want all the gold that you can give me. So to him, the relationship was only about what can I get out of this relationship. Now for the girl, on the other hand, and it's just happening that this is how the genders played out, she trusted this person, she believed in him, she went against her family's wishes or family's wealth and gave him something that she really should not have. She thought she is participating equally in a relationship, or she needs to do something so extreme to make this person like her. And of course there's no recovery from that. It's about 5 years ago that this happened, but she still blames herself. She wonders what happened to me, what came over me, why did I give it to him, why did I trust him so much, why didn't I see that my parents have a saving in this gold, why did I say yes so easily to him. So the nature of relationships, the number of relationships, and one relationship, two relationships, a young person can take it. They can go through the heartbreak. But when something like this or a mishap like the gold incident happens, people become more and more fragile and less able to cope with any setback that might come their way. So I really think that the nature of human relationships, whether it's with friends, whether it's by having a significant person in your life, the nature has become very transactional. It's become very give and take. What can you do for me? If it's not working out, people are not invested enough to spend the time, the energy, and have a conversation, have a good fight. If something is not working out, if you don't do this for me, I'll walk away. If this doesn't happen, I don't need to be in this one. So there is almost the sense of 2-minute Maggie noodles. It's instant, it's quick. But what's happening is after one, two, the third, fourth relationships start making people feel very tired and not at all happy or fulfilled as we hope a committed relationship might do. So I really think that this is an area all of us who are in the field of psychology need to look at, all of us in the field of psychology need to work on. Moving on. Sorry. To the second point, which I wanted to mention. What is the cause of depression? The exposure that the youth have today is not just to social media. Of course, it's very easy to have social media in our lives, but there's also a lot of ease of substances. And once again, if you looked at our country, probably some states have seen addictions worse than other states have seen. Now, alcohol, very easily available. If you asked people, especially in the metros, in school, how many of them have had a sip, a taste, a drink? It's surprising numbers that show up. Yeah. The ease of purchase, the amount of money that the youth have today to spend, and the cool quotient of alcohol makes people go into alcohol very, very easily. And probably the younger people are starting out their addictions in alcohol. There is an inability to have the frustration tolerance, and I'm going to be talking about it a little bit later, that the youth of today don't have the resilience or don't have the ability to tolerate a rejection or a no. And because it impacts them very deeply, it impacts their self-esteem, it makes them feel low, it makes them feel depressed. They turn to a substance that will make them feel better, that will make them feel a little bit high, and that will make them feel a little bit better than they were feeling before. While alcohol may be the poison of the richer children, what's coming the way of poorer youngsters, and Punjab in particular is a case in point, is drugs are freely available. Of course, they also come at a price, but I think more than a family has lost their son or daughter to something like heroin or crack or ganja, which is what one starts off with. So I think addiction and the ease of availability of the substances that we have going around the country. And this is a pan socio-economic status problem. It is not just the upper class that are, using alcohol or drugs. It is something that cuts across many social classes, leads families to ruin. The young children are no longer working, they're not employed, they're not gainfully engaged in any activity, they're not helping within the households, and they're constantly lost in their own world, whether it's, depression or withdrawal or physical symptoms as a result of the addiction that they have. And along with substance, we have addiction of the virtual world, right? So much of the contact is with the internet, so much of the connection is through the internet that the gaming devices have become best. How many households of youngsters we would walk into along with the television is a gaming console, the latest one, and then the more latest one. And hours and hours and hours are spent by able bodied youth focused on a screen in front of them with their fingers tapping away at the console and playing the game that they are totally engrossed in. And you mentioned suicide earlier, Pallavi. This is another reason where people are neglecting eating, neglecting their health, neglecting their physical activity, neglecting the emotional well-being of people around them. It's so addictive being inside a game in the virtual world. It's so absorbing that I only care about me and my score in the game. There have been murders committed because my parents didn't buy me what I wanted. There has been actual treatable depression, medically treatable depression, when parents have taken away gaming devices from their kids. There has been neglect of hygiene. Sometimes people have young kids and they're so absorbed in the virtual game that they don't feed the children that are, that are at home. So the total loss of productivity, of health, of concentration, of focus, of physical well-being, physical movement, and emotional well-being, because they don't want to relate to the outside world, which is your family members, which are your friends, which are your children. So if we have an addiction coming from gaming, we also have several social consequences coming out of it, several consequences to the family, just like any other addiction would. Like people behave badly when they drink alcohol. So with gaming addictions and so with internet addictions, that people are totally absorbed in it, so much so that they are no longer able to think about the well-being of those around them. The only thing that matters is me, and it's a sheer selfishness that comes about, not leading to healthy relationships, and of course, isolation after a while. I do need to mention that porn is another addiction of the virtual world. Again, because everybody is so much more tech savvy than we ever were, it's easy. You don't, I mean, you can easily bypass filters. Very young people are getting exposed to things that they really should not be getting used to. Their minds are too young, too immature. They don't know what they're seeing. And because this is a medium which is so easily available, this is a medium that is so widespread. And of course, people are always targeting younger and younger youth. They really want to catch people young. They want to make the money off the youth. So the consumption is only going up in India. And what we know is India is one of the biggest consumers in the world. And if you look at the cities out there, the top 6 out of the top 10 cities from India are on the notorious list. And I don't even have data from what the lockdown period must have been. This data that you see on your screen is still about 2 to 3 years old. Now, what's the impact? One, that an immature child or an immature young adult is seeing content that is not age appropriate. A long-term consequence of this is that the stuff that is shown becomes the basis on which they understand relationships. They understand this is how people are. Very quickly, they want to succeed in a relationship. Very quickly, they want to set the expectations, which will never match with the real world. The third point in the general scheme of things that we are going to look at today is on the social skills and the coping mechanism that the youth have, right? There is definitely a change in frustration tolerance amongst youths today. I think 30 years ago, 40 years ago, there was always something that you were also not good at. If you were trying hard and if you were industrious enough, probably you did all right. But there was, people were given ranks, people were given marks, people were told they're good, people were told they're not good. At present, there is a system that's coming in which I think has just taken things to a little bit of an extreme, which says that children mustn't give exams up till grade 6. There should be no ranking. Nobody should feel that they are not good enough. While there is a lot of merit in this, that give children confidence, give children the esteem, but it does not mirror the real world. In the real world, there is no easy success. If we are going to make it in the real world, and we see it in the HR world a lot, the young millennials who are coming into work have a very hard time accepting a boss. Why are they telling me what to do? I know what to do. I'm going to be able to figure it out. And more than one intervention is about how does a manager make somebody who's a millennial understand that I am more experienced. I know what I'm talking about. I am, an expert in the industry, and you just need to do what I'm asking you to do, because I've done this before. I'm welcoming your ideas, but not every idea of yours is going to be taken on board. So the ability to take leadership, the ability to take direction, the ability to take, feedback has become extremely poor in the youth which are joining the jobs right now. And it's leading to several problems in the organization, but the youth themselves are struggling to cope because the frustration tolerance is so low. Something very small like a feedback in the office can send them on a downward spiral. Something as simple as somebody got a promotion and I didn't get the promotion is enough to cause a serious breakdown or a serious reevaluation of myself. That, oh, they got the promotion. Nothing is in the long run. Everything needs to happen in the now. So if today that person got the promotion, I begin to feel that I'm not good enough. There's some unfairness going on. There is some somebody's trying to ruin my career over here. So it's very difficult for people to play the long game right now. It's very difficult for people to say that, okay, I didn't get this promotion, but my career is over 10 years and 20 years. Maybe something else which is good will come my way. So in the workplace, we're certainly seeing low frustration tolerance, low ability to cope with disappointment, low ability to take feedback. And when these things happen, as they will in a working environment, people tend to feel very, very low and disintegrate very quickly. The second aspect of social skills is something I've already mentioned a little bit earlier, but it really bears repeating. What keeps us emotionally healthy, what keeps us away from depression, what keeps us away from hopelessness is how many connections I have, how deeply I am connected to other people. And unfortunately, in our generation today, with the youth of today, this is an area we're really seeing fracture in. What is the bonding and anchor that I have with my family? What is the understanding I have? What is the ability to communicate? It's very transactional right now, the ability to communicate with the family. I'm not saying that it's true for all families, but it's getting more and more transactional. And the second one, which helps us, if it's not our family that we can anchor to, if it's not our family that we have the comfort of being vulnerable and sharing, then it is social connections. It is friends, it is colleagues, it is people who are in a network around me. All of these things help us to cope. And because we are casting the net wide, because we are casting the net to many more people, the younger people today are missing out on things that would bring happiness, which would bring social connections, and which would actually lead to a decrease in depression. So this is an area that, again, as everybody who's in the field, as teachers of the youth today, if there is one skill that you can help the youth of today work on and take ahead and do better in life with, is forming good connections and keeping good connections with their family and their friends, because what helps us come out of a low is our own ability to tolerate and bear with frustration or disappointment, one. But the second is the people around us who get us out of a rabbit hole when we are coping or struggling with emotions which are difficult for us. And in general, I think one of the things that we are missing in the generation today is that they have a very high need for gratification. They have a very high need for everything must go my way. And if it doesn't, then it's a black or white evaluation of the situation. This didn't happen for me, and so everything is bad. I'm not good. They are not good. So the black and whiteness of it and the temporariness of it makes people very vulnerable to emotional cracks. Yeah. The ability to stay in a conflict, the ability to stay and have an argument and a healthy fight. And I think once more, the newspapers are flooded with reports of people who've done drastic things because they couldn't see the end of the conflict. If the conflict happened today, the emotions that they experienced are so overwhelming that they can't wait. They can't hold on to this, maybe anger, maybe aggression, maybe frustration, long enough till feelings cool down and feelings subside. So we see extreme steps being taken. People feel so low, again, they may end their lives, or they may end the relationship, or they may attack the other person, because the own emotional resilience is come to something which is too low at this moment with the youth. And the last factor, of course, I think we do need to talk about the parenting styles over the last maybe 15, 20 years. And I think not only the social structure, which is giving the youth too much, too early, too soon, without any checks and balances. The question is back to parents, that why are your children on social media so much? What would a child have done 2 decades ago? Parents would not have allowed children to sit at home. They would not be allowed to spend so much time on the internet. They would be kicked out, go outside, play, do things differently. So the first rule that parents need to set is around these kind of boundaries, that what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. And because parents don't have time, we find that um, before a child is one, they will be given a phone. You have depression in children as young as 10 because a phone was taken away. You have children throwing tantrums because they no longer had the access to the social media the way they wanted to. The same person is going to grow up and is going to know that if I throw a tantrum, my parents don't have the time to invest in me and I will get what I want. Because parents know that setting a boundary, putting discipline in place, saying no to everything that the person, I want these sneakers, no, you can't have it. There's a big tantrum, and then the parent gives in because they don't have the time, they don't have the energy, or they don't want to engage again in that conflict, or that ability to say no is something that parents are really needing to work on right now. The ability and willingness to discipline means you have to dig your heels in. You don't need to be an authoritarian, you just need to be authoritative. While you want your child to blossom, you want them to have the best possible in the world, but you also need to set boundaries as a parent. You also need to let the child know who's in charge. At this moment the power equation is very flipped, and the demands on money, the demands on material gain, the demands on how things are going to happen within the house is quite skewed in the favor of the youth of today, where they don't have the maturity. They're being governed by very transient things, very superficial things. And the first connection and the first bonding and the first know that the youth of today need to experience in a very big way needs to come from the parents. More and more parents are feeling helpless. They're giving in to things like buying the mobile phone, giving the gadgets to the youth, buying bikes, sometimes cars, depending on the financial stretch. And it's never financial, the scrutiny is how much is my parent willing to stretch for me. So if my father can afford a bike, let me ask for the car and let me demand it and let me create a tantrum till I get it without actually earning it with rights. You need to buy this for me, all my friends have it. And parents are being guilted into saying yes and doing things that they really mustn't, because these are things that are unhealthy for the children that they're bringing up. These are things that are not going to lead them to cope in the real world out there. They're only going to make them poor citizens in an organization. It's going to make them poor partners in a committed relationship. It's going to make the youth poor social citizens in the larger context. Because if everybody comes with a sense of entitlement that I get what I want and people around me must support my needs and my desires, we are getting into a society which is going to have a lot of cracks and a lot of fractures. And as teachers too, I'm sure you experience this, and as teachers too, that the setting of boundaries in a reciprocal way, in a discussed way, in a respectful way is always possible. It's an easy way to give in now, but it leads to so much later. And a low frustration tolerance, that means you're not resilient enough. And it means that any opportunity where everything doesn't go your way leaves you vulnerable to depression, leaves you vulnerable to anxiety, leaves you feeling unloved, ungratified, and so much more. So I'm going to stop here now and ask for questions.